main thing that an employee has to remember, right, is that they are subject to the assessment and judgment of the employer, whether they like it or not, because the law is clear on that. You work in that job. You are subject to judgment by your boss as to whether or not you're performing. It's not for the employee to say, no, I think this is good. I disagree with you when you say this is bad, right? Because some jobs are assessed quite subjectively. Of course, it's easy if you have, measurable KPIs and things like that.
Yep.
So that's the first thing to remember, that they cannot push back and say, I disagree with you when you say that, I didn't do well.
Hello, welcome to another episode of Workaround Podcast. This week is about employee performance management. Now, the regular reviews and evaluations of performance is very important to assess, the strength, the gap, and the KPIs, and the progress of your achievement as well in one role that ties with salary, bonus, payout, etc. But to me, as a HR and also as a leader, the most meaningful part is actually performance review session is actually the platform for us to help us and also our people to grow and also to develop in their roles. But however, I see the risk. If this performance review is not done properly, it will create legal risk. So that's the reason why I'm having my guest today with me in the studio to talk about performance management best practices from the legal perspective. Welcome, Sel. And Sel is the lawyer, maybe full name is Selvamalar Alagaratnam, is a lawyer that focuses in employment law in Malaysia. And today, Sal is going to share with us about more insights, best practices, and also some practical tips for us as employers and also employees as well. Welcome.
Thank you, Mi Fong. It's really great to be here. I have to say, in my almost 3 decades of legal practice, this is the first time I'm in a radio studio, and it's a lot more scary than being in court.
Let's learn together. Every day is a learning day. Likewise for me as well. Can you imagine from HR to this studio and hosting the podcast, right? Now, so before we proceed, right, I just want to share with everyone about the survey at high level about top 3 success and failure factors of performance review. What are the top 3 success factors? Communication, feedback, and fairness. And the top 3 failure factors are unfairness, biases, and lack of feedback. So how I summarize is actually, when it comes to communication and feedback, is about engagement, about conversations between the managers and also the employee as well. Biases and fairness, this is where the reason why I need you to be in studio today. Okay. So what do you think about this, the survey results?
I completely agree with what you said about communication. I think that is the key to any successful performance management. Now, when we talk about biasness and unfairness, right, it really depends whose perspective you're looking at it. Typically, I can tell you from my experience, I have never encountered an employee when they are told that their performance is not up to mark, saying, oh, I agree with you.
Okay.
I think this is a fair assessment. And that's human nature. I mean, even at home, if you take the situation between parents and kids, right? Children always feel like, oh, you're being so unfair. Okay?
Yeah.
In school, students feel that the teachers are unfair. So, I think that's a very subjective thing. Yeah.
Because everyone come from different background and different expectations, especially when it comes to corporate life, right? Because this performance review, it ties with your salary, ties with
That's
your bonuses, and also your promotion opportunities as well. Now, let's zoom into the topic today, right, Sel? What are the common challenges in performance processes? Let's talk about employers and also from employees' perspectives.
I would say the common challenges is, at the risk of repeating what you said, it is communication. Often both parties cannot or do not communicate as well as they should and as regularly as they should. The other challenge is often a misunderstanding of the purpose of performance management. And this again happens on both sides, right? The employers or the managers, right, tend to resort to performance management as a last ditch attempt. You know, they let things go for so long, they let things slide, and then it becomes too late. It's almost like a panic response, you know, to the situation. And from the employee side, often it is a sense of, you know, this is the beginning of the end. That's what they tend to think, you know, that if they're being if their performance is being managed, they think that, oh, this is a step towards pushing me out. So I think it's important that both sides understand that performance management is actually part and parcel of a person's journey through the employment.
Yep. Whether you like it or not, you still have to do it. I always, you know, in my past experience, right, once of my team members will be, oh, this is a phobia. It's a, you know, especially when come to the mid-year and also year-end is a phobia period. Because if we don't communicate well, then people have a different expectation. Like just now you mentioned, like, for example, if today you put me in PIP, probably I assume that based on the past experience or my friend's experience that you're going to kick me out.
Yeah, so
right?
I better
But
go look for a job.
You are right. You're right. Now, so this is a most you know, common challenges, right, for employee is about communication here. But let's talk about best practices. I know that it's going to be a long list of best practices, but maybe like, you know, top 3, top 5 that we need to take note in conducting the fair performance management sessions.
Okay, so the first is to lay out very clearly what the job expectations are, right? And that has to be done right at the beginning. There is no point towards, you know, nearing the review date then for the employee to, or worse still, at the review to become aware that, oh, all these things were expected of me. And again, it's a two-way thing, right? What is key is when an employee starts a new job or a new role, ideally they should also take the initiative, you know, to ask, okay, what's expected of me?
You're right. Yep. Two ways.
It's two ways. So that is the first key. It's, you know, getting the expectations right. Both parties are on the same page. The second is regular feedback. You know, there must be regular feedback. We don't have to wait until the annual assessment, or I know some organizations have it twice a year. That is actually too little and often too late.
I think so too.
Yeah. Essential that as and when work is progressing, projects are ongoing, or sometimes jobs are, you know, consist of several projects, you can give feedback when each project completes or even midway. Right? And likewise, the employee can also ask,
what do you think, boss?
What do you think? You know, were you happy with the outcome? You know, and, you know, should we change things a little bit? So that's it. It's feedback is important. I would say that is key. And the other big issue I find, and I call it the Asian syndrome, is that we are very non-confrontational people.
Yeah, we are, right?
Yeah, no one wants to look at someone and say, hey, you know, you're not performing, right? So a lot of times these conversations are avoided until it can't be helped. And to make matters worse, I've also come across cases, right, where, you know, they want to exit someone and they say this person has been a poor performer for 3 years, right?
3 years?
Yeah, 3 years.
Okay, this is there's a red flag here. 3 years.
But I can tell you, when you look at the documented performance review, right? The person has always been marked as performing or average.
Precisely, right? Yeah.
And so again, I say this is a syndrome we have where people just don't want to address it at the first opportunity they have. They let things slide until either things get so bad and it's not manageable anymore, or the manager's job is on the line because he's got a team member who's not performing, right? So only then the manager decides, okay, I need to do something.
You know what? Let me, it makes to recall, right? Maybe perhaps the managers of the manager also doing the same thing to that manager as well,
Yes.
right? Yeah, because I think for Asian or maybe Malaysians, we think that the giving feedback is confronting you.
That's right.
We have to continue having that kind of open mindset. So I do agree with you. Regular catch up. How regular is regular? Please define that. Every 6 months to me is too long too. Like, I always like to give immediate feedback or maybe like catch up every 2 months with the team members. I think that's fair and reasonable enough. Or get the immediate feedback that, hey, boss, what do you think? After that major presentation, for example, what do you think? Oh, you need to improve this and that. Okay, I'll take note. Yeah. I think that's timely regular catch up timely manner lah. So I think these are the thanks for some of the so-called the best practices. But of course, we have a long list to go. Now, because if we don't manage it well and we lack of the best practices, we'll come to these two key issues here that I want to highlight and seek for advice: PIP and probation period. Okay, let's talk about PIP. And I'm sure that, you have been handling cases like this for more than 30 years, right? What have been missing in most of the cases that you handle in the local market?
Okay, so actually PIP, right, which stands for Performance Improvement Plan or Program, is a formalized performance management process. So many companies, they have a standard PIP form, where they will put down what is the expected outcome, what is the timeline you're supposed to achieve it. But having the form which HR would have created, and possibly with support of lawyers, is one thing. It's how the input is important. And then that is where the manager comes into play, right? The manager has to put down the expectation very clearly. I have seen forms where they've just written improve leadership skills. Now, if the person is not doing well from a leadership perspective, probably the person doesn't know what he's doing wrong and what he should do, right? So then you need to put down very specific guidance. So of course, it's very easy if, let's say, you have a manager who's been yelling and shouting, then you can say, you have to eliminate bullying behavior, do not raise your voice, give feedback in private, don't humiliate. You can say that. But sometimes it's a bit intangible.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah. Leadership is so intangible. I have my own. I can always argue that my leadership style is different than yours.
That's right.
So please, then as a manager, then you have to be even more specific.
Exactly.
In
right?
what way? Communications, etc. Right?
Yeah, and I'm not going to pretend it's easy. It's not. When it comes to things like leadership skills, management style, because there are always two sides to it, right? You can have a manager who says, no, the old-fashioned Guru Besar style is the best. I get results that way.
Yeah.
And then you have another a lot of people who will say that, oh no, the current generation, they're all strawberries, easily bruised. You have to handle them with care,
Fragile.
Fragile. So, I mean, I'm not a leadership coach. I don't know the answer to that.
Yeah. So let's say from a legal perspective, right? If like the statement, for example, improve on leadership. So what's next for the employee? I don't have the guidance. I don't understand your direction.
Exactly. So that is where the manager has to lay it out and say exactly what is expected. You need to give feedback more regularly. You need to give other forms of support. And, sometimes, when people don't like management style, it's the fact that my manager messages me at 10 p.m.
Yep.
Okay, about tomorrow. So you can say that don't do it because you're encroaching in people's personal time, so you will have to drill down to details. A bit painful because you may have a manager thinking he ought to know it, but the point is he doesn't.
Yeah.
And that is why you are where you are at.
So there's assumptions doesn't work in these PIP. Because I came across one really is really kisah benar, where the manager's intention is memang want to fill that employee. And even the managers came to HR office by saying, okay, you guys can force me. They use the word force into PIP process, because PIP process is so painful.
Yes.
Right? And, it's just like playing tennis like that.
Yeah.
But they say, no matter what, he's definitely not performing, and I just want to get rid of him and find me the replacement as soon as possible. So I think that's painful. Of course, from a HR perspective, we are the facilitator in this case. That's where we consulted the lawyer, etc. as well lah. So I think that's some of the missing point, which is not a non-objective evaluation and comment.
They have to understand what is the purpose of a PIP, and that the intention should be for the person to improve, to support the person. Yeah.
Question to you: if you already knew that the intention of the manager is that to fill that employee, and they came out with a very open statement, what if he passed BIP? So as a legal advisor, what would you do?
I tell them exactly what I did. I said that is what you should be hoping for, that the person will improve and stay on as a contributing member of your team, right? And if they say something like, no, this is the last straw, we actually want him out, then the question is, why didn't you do something sooner?
I see.
Right?
Sooner. Yeah. Okay, cool. All right. Now, this is PIP. We're going to deep dive into that from an employee's perspective. Probation period. I'm a new employee. I have a new team members. What can HR and managers do? And when shall we start that process, or the right timing to start that performance review process for the new employees?
So, of course, for a new, I'm tempted to say from day one, but you can't review a performance until the person has worked for a little while. But typically, what is expected during a probation period, it's a learning time, right? For the employee to learn the ropes, how to do the job, and also for the manager to understand how this employee works, what motivates the employee, how the employee reacts to things. And, so both sides, this is a period when both see whether this is the right job for the person. So feedback should be given right at the beginning. And it is a misconception that just because someone starts off on probation, at the end of the probation period, you can just show the person the door. You still have to show that there was some performance review done. So ideally, my recommendation always is, at the minimum, midway through the probation period, have a review that is documented and communicate that later to the employee after that review to say, okay, you're doing well in these areas, but these areas you need to buck up, and your next review will be, on whatever date.
Before your probation period, before we deciding on your probation period extension, etc. lah.
That's
all
right.
And also, of course, lead to confirmation as well. So thanks for that. Now,
can I just add one thing before? A lot of employers, right, make the mistake of exiting someone before the probation period ends.
It happens as well,
right? And I don't blame them, because sometimes they say, look, the probation period is 6 months, but in the second month, so much of havoc had happened. We can't keep this person on, right? It's causing us too much damage. But the law is that you are the employer. You set the probation period. You must give the employee the full opportunity.
I see.
Yeah.
So, I can always say, okay, this second month, I've been hearing a lot of bad feedback from this about this new guy, and a bad attitude, and there's a tendency for this person to come late, and etc. So as a manager, I have to document to give the feedback.
That's right.
But I can't terminate them immediately.
No.
So the employees, I think that's a good point here.
Yeah.
So the employees also have right to say, hey, guys, managers, look, I have a 6 months. I'm given a 6 months to prove myself.
Yes.
Okay. That's another good point. All right, cool. Now, so again, this comes to the employee's perspective, right? you share a lot, but I just want to share. I want to get your advice. That maybe highlight like few key things that we means that employees need to remember during pre and post performance review season.
Okay. Actually, the main thing that an employee has to remember, right, is that they are subject to the assessment and judgment of the employer, whether they like it or not, because the law is clear on that. You work in that job. You are subject to judgment by your boss as to whether or not you're performing. It's not for the employee to say, no, I think this is good. I disagree with you when you say this is bad, right? Because some jobs are assessed quite subjectively. Of course, it's easy if you have, measurable KPIs and things like that.
Yep.
So that's the first thing to remember, that they cannot push back and say, I disagree with you when you say that, I didn't do well in this area.
If I say disagree, can I come up with the points and supporting data
you
as
can,
well? Okay.
if you have good reason to, right?
Okay.
The other thing is, of course, to take reviews seriously. Many employees do themselves a disfavor by not preparing for the review session.
True.
They need to prepare. They need to take it seriously. So, prepare your own notes. What have you done? What are the challenges that you faced? So that the employee can communicate it to the manager during the review session to say, for example, I don't know whether this is a good example. Like, let's say it's in your case, right? Or one of your production people. If they know that some recording went bad, then they can actually say, actually on that day there was a power failure, or there was a very bad thunderstorm. Or the interviewee, this lawyer who came from nowhere didn't know how to behave and kept disrupting the whole thing, right? So they can actually justify, so they can say, yes, I know this didn't go well on this date, but it's because these things happen, right? Challenges that we did not foresee. So yeah, it's preparing for the review, being open to feedback.
Yes.
Not having that whole wall up and taking every feedback as an attack. That is something that unfortunately happens, regularly. And then having I would say, positive attitude. Take on board the feedback and be prepared to work on it. And if there is anything that they don't understand, again, not some are hostile, some are just very scared.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh my God. Okay. I think I will just shut up and keep my head down and plod on and hope the next review will be good. But no, it's actually to ask questions, to understand, and it's also fine to say something like, actually, I find this particular area very challenging. Can I have some guidance? For example, some people, they go into sales jobs for the first time in their life. I would probably fail drastically, right, if I had to do a sales job. And it's fine to say, can I sort of shadow someone more senior for half a day to see how they do it, So they can also ask.
Seek for help.
That's right. Receive the feedback, ask for help. Yeah, that is what I would say an employee should
be open
do.
and put the emotion aside.
That's
because, when cries, when emo in that conversations, I think you will drag that entire session to a different level, right?
But I think that's not always easy or fair, even fair to tell someone to put their emotions aside because it's very personal. I think if emotions come into play, just allow it to play out. And
I think that's how the conversation should be, right? Now, just now you talk about like it'll be open. I just want to ask about the legal rights of employees in that entire process. What are they, some of the rights that we can practice as an employee?
As an employee, I suppose, when you say legal rights, it is because the law actually says that before you terminate someone for poor performance, there are 3 requirements that ought to be met. And this is the same, right? All the cases say the same thing. Number 1 is there must be communication to the employee that the employee is not performing and in what aspects the employee is not performing. Number 2, the employee must be given reasonable time to improve.
Okay.
And number 3, whatever support and guidance should be provided to the employee. So when you ask me what are the employees' rights, it is the right to these 3 things.
Okay, ask for this. Okay, I am under, let's say for example, I'm under PIP, but I need support. I need help from these resources, this team, etc., so that I can perform better. Also, these are they must ask for this in order for them to perform.
Yeah, they can ask for it. And of course, it must be reasonable. You know, for example, if you've got an accounting degree and you come into work and then if you say, I need somebody to teach me how, then it's unreasonable, right? Yeah.
But when it comes to context, like for example, I have 3 projects at the same time. But it's lack of, time and resources.
That's
I can
right.
seek for resources.
That's right.
So these are the 3 key points that everyone should practice that.
Yeah.
But now we are talking about new way of working, hybrid, work from home. How the employer and also the employee need to take note of. I want to showcase that I am productive because I don't see my manager every day, right? So, and I also don't see you every day as an employee. So, anything that we need to take note of from legal perspective.
I think when employees, of course, I know during the pandemic, we all worked from home and we muddled along the best we could. But now in a time when you're doing it out of choice, right? If you're allowing people this flexible work arrangements and they're working from home or working from anywhere, the most important thing is to decide how you're going to measure productivity.
Okay.
Right? There must be some measurement, some method, right?
Yeah.
And that would vary from industry to industry and, depending on the roles as well within the same industry. In this aspect, I mean, you might say that, okay, I think for salespeople, it's probably the easiest because they've got a target and, as long as they hit the target. But for many other jobs, it really depends, Some very large organizations actually have technical ability to assess like what time the person logs on to the computer, how many keystrokes, per hour and things like that.
That's micromanagement, don't you think so?
But it depends. I mean, if you're let's say assessing a data entry clerk, maybe it makes sense, right? But in other jobs, you probably have to see, what is it that you consider to be a success point for the person and assess them accordingly.
So again, go back to the SMART goals lah.
That's right.
Objective and tangible. But intangible part is always a challenge. You hardly online. I called you. I can't get hold of you, and then you take time to respond, etc. That's right. Where the gray area comes in, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Right now, just now we talk about that survey where the top 3 failure factors. Biases and fairness. Okay, I just want to quote what you mentioned just now, where we have to be prepared. We are subject to judgment because we are salary workers. Of course, the organization you're working is not a charitable organization. Company also have the KPI as well. But also, just like you mentioned, like even in a family's environment, the kids are mine. You're not fair to me. So I just want to hear from you. Maybe share some situations where the performance is really being judged unfairly due to suspicious factors like discrimination, unfair dismissal, and etc.
That's right.
So maybe share more concrete one. Yeah.
I'm glad you asked this question, Mi Fong, because there can be instances where it is really unfair. It's not just a perception.
Okay. Yeah.
For example, right, when as I said earlier, sales job's easy, you fix a KPI, but it can be unfair because some jobs, right, they will just increase your sales target every year, let's say by 10%, but there is a point when it becomes unreasonable. You know, is it reasonable? So it depends, again, what product you're selling, right? So is it reasonable to expect an individual to, 5 years ago to have sold 10 million ringgit worth of that product and now to be selling, 15 million ringgit?
Okay.
I mean, is the market ready for it? Is there a market for the product? So those things can be unfair if they just keep increasing. And I actually had a case before, right? My clients came to me and they were very pleased with themselves because they were unhappy with an employee and they had decided they wanted to exit him. And they had come up with this fantastic idea that they will double his sales target, and they themselves said, and he will definitely not achieve it.
Okay.
So at the end of the year, we can push him out, So I had to say no, because in court, actually, when there are defined quotas or targets, the courts actually do look into whether it is fair.
Yep.
And even when it is the same target year on year, if in a particular year an employee doesn't meet it, it's open to the employee to say that it was unfair to expect the employee to meet the same target because there were intervening factors. For example, there can be a recession.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? And like, for example, people who were in the IT or computer trade in, the year 2000, because of the fear for Y2K, in 99, sales were very bad.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? Nobody was going to buy a new computer.
They'll wait and see because there's a market forces like that, right?
Yeah. So in those instances, it is not wrong for the employee to say that the expectation was unfair.
What if the employers decided, because they already have the intention, I just want to get rid of you, right?
Yes.
So, and if they insist not to revise the sales quota, and then definitely chances for employee to win against the employers are higher.
There is, of course, there is.
Cases,
yeah.
So, and also the other one is a discrimination. Sometimes it's so intangible, right? Sometimes, okay, say for example, of course I need to document it. Like, for example, okay, let's have a team building or team lunch. But somehow I decided not to include you or not to include certain people because with the reason, this is actually for certain discussions. And that managers or the leader have a special intentions that, okay, I foresee that this person is going to leave soon. I heard from market that he or she is looking out. I purposely don't include that.
Of course.
So how that can be built as a case is intangible, right? But intention is there.
Yes. So often when it comes to things like discrimination, you would have to show a pattern. Right?
Okay.
Not a one-off. And you're right. A lot of times there is discrimination in this subtle way where some, for example, right, when we talk about gender discrimination, you might have a manager who decides, okay, I'm going to have a huddle after work hours.
Okay.
But it might make things very difficult for the female team members because they want to rush home. They have to pick their kids from the babysitter or, they need to go back and prepare a meal for the family. And so it does discriminate against the female members, right?
Wow,
Because the men think, it's great. Let's go and huddle on a Friday night, have some drinks, talk about work, do a postmortem of the week. But it's not fair on the people who need to go home to see to their families. So discrimination can exist in many ways. And it's often subtle. So what you need to be looking for is a pattern.
The pattern.
Yeah.
Like, okay, let's say, this has been happening for every month. But let's say the female employee choose to attend once because, you are still in the employment, right? You still need to kind of give face to your boss.
Yes.
So I attend one. But would that one-time attendance can be another argument from the employee perspective? You see, you can attend, you did attend once.
That's right.
But would that pattern, like another 5 times, I did not attend because I can't, right?
So again, here comes down to communication. It's important that the female employee voices up to say, hey, it's really not convenient for me to do it at this time. Can we do it during lunch instead? Or something like that. And and see if they would meet the person halfway.
But can we document it? How can we document it? Just a verbal, boss, I can't make it because do I need to like put in the writing, say that due to family commitment, etc.?
So of course, if you're looking at long term and what happens when there's a dispute eventually, right? When it's documented, it is better because it would serve as evidence. But in reality, if we all were to operate like that, you make people feel very hostile.
It's so tiring, right?
No, and it becomes quite a hostile environment if you keep putting things. So you need to strike a balance, and sometimes some form of informal written, like even a WhatsApp or even an email, but it can be phrased in a more friendly manner, to say something like, I noticed the meeting is again at 6 p.m. on Friday, but I do have family commitments. Do you think it's possible to have it during lunch? I would appreciate it. Something like that.
I see. But so we are all human. We always come with a good intention. Unless we could smell that there's a bad intention from the managers that, they purposely exclude me from the team meeting because they're going to talk about business on Friday night, but based on my situation, I definitely can't make it. So I can voice out lah. Another situation, I am very interested when it comes to this part, right? Okay, we always come up with SMART goals, measurable and tangible, etc. Let's say talk about SMART goals. It's a salesperson. We come with sales. Easier for us to talk about, right? My KPI is to achieve X numbers by end of this year and maybe acquire X new accounts by end of the month as well, etc. I met all the numbers. And my managers still, at the end of the day, still think that I am, let's say 1 to 5. I'm just, under level 3. But I rank myself level 4. Because my boss think that, yes, you have overachieved all your numbers, but customer, they receive customers complaints. They receive about unhappy, unhappy team members about you, and that's the reason why I rate you 3 instead of 4. How that employee, the sales employee, can build the case based on unfairness?
Well, I think the question is that unfair? Because is that the expectation that a sales employee is only judged on sales numbers?
It comes back to the SMART goals, that's goals and objectives that you set and communicated between you and your manager. Okay.
Yes. So ideally, the employee shouldn't be seeing a performance assessment form for the first time at the end of the year when there is the review. An employee should look at the performance assessment form right at the beginning of the year to understand what is it that they will be assessed on. Very rarely will it be the case that a salesperson, the only thing the person has to do is to meet
numbers.
Right? So,
but maybe they have an impression, okay, my job is actually to meet numbers, that's it. So no matter how bad attitude I am in, I don't care because my boss just care about the numbers. So they have that assumption if the manager don't communicate that since day one. Okay, so regular catch up is still needed lah.
Yes.
So of course, thanks for that because you already answered my next question. In fact, I wanted to ask at which stage would you recommend the employees to initiate or start the performance management? Because let's say we're talking about follow the calendar year lah. Okay, December, and then bonus payout is March. Then only we start like after April. Would that be too late? Or we again come back to let's start from January onwards?
Actually, again. Performance review may be done at the end of the year, but that's a review of the performance for the whole year.
Of the whole year.
So actually, the performance management itself should start from the beginning. So at the beginning, it will be making sure that both parties understand the expectations, what they will be assessed on, how frequently, sometimes even the frequency of feedback, right? You may have an employee sitting there thinking, 3 months has gone by, my boss hasn't said anything to me.
My boss have not, come out with the goals and objectives first. I'm doing nothing. I think this is also a reset for you as well, right?
Yeah. Or sometimes they're goals and objectives, but 3 months in, the employee doesn't know, am I going in the right direction or not, right? Whereas the manager thinks that, oh, this is how I've been doing it all the while, right?
Okay.
So it's important at the beginning that, everybody understands how, what is expected and how it will unfold as the year goes along.
Even the managers have not come back to you. So, in a big organization where we have a system, we have a resources, right? So we have a system to pop up, hey, it's time to do performance review. It's time to set up your, SMART goals with your employees, and that's the pop up, the reminders lah. But for some companies that without that system to support them, then they have to do extra.
In a sense, yes, but I've also seen cases, right, where despite or because they have such sophisticated systems, the communication is worse.
Oh, for example,
there is, I think a lot of companies now use this program or system called Workday.
Okay,
right? I'm sure it's all very good, but when I actually talk to the clients when the case is, in court, is they will say, oh, because it was on Workday, the employee should have looked at it.
Assumption again.
Yeah, they don't even know if the employee looked at it. And there's also no face-to-face. The manager is sitting somewhere, inputting all this in the system. The employee then looks at it in his or her own time without having the benefit of the manager across the table to ask questions.
I see.
Right?
Like whether this is realistic goals or not, whether it's measurable or not, right?
Yeah.
So I think, oh my goodness.
Not even that. I mean,
assumption.
There's a lot of value in face-to-face communication. I mean, for example, we're doing this. You could have done it in a Q&A and I just fill out all the answers. You will lose something.
I think so.
So, I am not a big fan of these systems. I know they help HR a lot with the documentation, but it's important that we don't forget, the importance of having direct communication.
Good point here. I just want to highlight that, right? How often we do performance review. Some companies only once a year, some are like, twice a year. But I also, from a managers and also HR perspective, I also see that managers also need help as well. I tend to forget about, what I've done 6 months ago or a year ago. Then I need to recap. So I need help. So, of course, HR will try to come up with the training again and enablement programs again for both sides, the managers and employees. So, I mean, everyone needs reminder because my job, I have one manager did mention to me, hey, my job is not just to focus on the performance management, So because I have it's only maybe 1%. But I say this is very important because at the end of the day, it ties with their promotion and of course, it's bonuses and review. But to me, again, from the beginning of the conversations, I see that it's such a good platform for us to how to help and grow the employees. Because when it comes to performance review, it's about the intention, how to help your team members to grow and develop as a manager. Otherwise, if you don't enjoy this part, then I think maybe also need to ask yourself whether would you like to be a manager.
Exactly.
And also depends on some of excuses like span of control. I have too many. So I think the reasonable span of control probably 6 or 8, 7 direct report lah. But manager also can claim that I have 13, I have 15 under me.
Depends on how big the company is.
So that's why in this case, I expect that everything is a Workday, everything is a system. So I expect them to do it myself. But again, communication is very important. You need to review that communication take place, right? So now, I think that ties to the last question that I have, Sal, is that let's say I find that this is unfair. I see the biases elements in my review. Can I say no? Can I reject?
You can't reject a PIP. Okay.
Or even not
question?
Only PIP, and also at the end of my annual performance rating.
Yeah. So it's not reject, but you can put down your views.
Okay.
You can say that I feel that this has been unfair for these reasons.
Okay.
You can't reject it outright.
I see. Yeah. I can't reject, but I can. Okay, so
you can counter
would that
it with
counter
your,
it?
Yes.
But that will prolong that entire process of communications, right?
Well, it depends. If it's a year-end performance review, then it just gets documented. And of course, if it affects the rating and it affects the increment or bonus, and if the employee feels it's unfair, then there should be within most organizations, there's a grievance process. So then if they feel there's been real bias, real unfairness, they can then take it up through the grievance process.
I see.
Right?
Okay, just again, come back to, the legal rights
That's right.
of the employees as well. Well, that's all for my, my questions today, my concerns and my curiosity today. Definitely, it's a good conversation. It's a beginning of the conversation about how open we need to be when it comes to performance management. But last but not least, any advice, any other practical tips that you need to, share with the audience?
Well, I think we've covered most of it, really.
Okay. Yeah. Cool. Now, I think it's very clear to me that regular catch-up is very important. Just now you mentioned about communications and accurate and relevant information put in writing. I mean, with intention, right? And also, and open for feedback. Because if you put the emotion aside, then probably things will get better, so that we also do not have any surprises at the end of the day. And if we, again, because today's episode is actually talking about the legal perspective of a performance management, at the end of the day, we really want to minimize the cost of impact and consequences if we are not doing the things right. Well, I hope that whether you are an employer or you are the employee, I hope that this sessions is informative enough for you. And do write to us and reach out to Sel and Mi Fong in LinkedIn. And if you have further comments about this, till we meet again in next episodes of Workaround Podcast. This is Mi Fong. Thank you.
Thank you.